The breaking news this morning, House lawmakers are scrambling now to get back to the Hill and vote on the now new version of Trump's massive tax cut and spending bill before their self-imposed Friday deadline. The bill is becoming really something of a ping pong ball. The House voted first, then the Senate voted and made changes, and so now the House must vote again. And if they make further changes, you get where this is headed. With this, House Speaker Mike Johnson is facing another major test of his power. Many House Republicans are publicly voicing serious doubts about the Senate changes. That includes steeper cuts to Medicaid and a nearly $1 trillion increase in the deficit over the House's version. Johnson can only afford to lose 3 GOP votes. The Speaker says that he's confident a final vote could come today. But back to that scrambling, they are literally also scrambling to physically get back to the Capitol as bad weather canceled a whole bunch of flights for many lawmakers that are trying to make it back in. Here's the Speaker last night.
Well, we're having weather delays getting everybody back right now, but assuming we have a full House, we'll get it through the Rules Committee in the morning. We'll move that forward to the floor, and hopefully we're voting on this by tomorrow or Thursday at latest.
CNN's Arlette Saenz is at the Capitol for us this morning. And Arlette, it did make it through the Rules Committee while we were all sleeping. So set the stage for what is going to happen today.
Well, Kate, it could be another long slog ahead as lawmakers are 2 days away from that deadline to pass President Trump's domestic agenda bill. As you mentioned, it passed through the Rules Committee just last overnight, clearing a key procedural hurdle. It received 2 no votes from Republicans, Chip Roy and Ralph Norman, who have expressed reservations about this bill. But this will be a major test once again for House Speaker Mike Johnson as he is trying to hold his GOP conference together to get this bill across the finish line. Now, there are various factions that they are trying to appease here. There are those more conservative lawmakers who believe that this does not do enough to cut spending, and there are others who are concerned about the steeper cuts to Medicaid that were made in the Senate plan. So that highlights the various ways they're going to have to try to stitch together support to pass this bill. Now, any changes that are made to this bill would then require it to go back to the Senate, and that is something that House leadership and President Trump are trying to avoid. But here's a sample of some of the concerns about the process, about the bill itself, that have been expressed by GOP lawmakers over the last 24 hours.
So this whole thing is, I don't know what to call it. It's a show.
My colleagues in the Senate failed us. My colleagues in the Senate failed us.
I think the founders and the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence would be astounded that we're adding debt to our children and grandchildren who are defenseless.
Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson can only afford to lose 3 Republican votes on this measure, a very narrow razor-thin majority that he is operating with. And we've already heard about dozens of lawmakers express concerns about this bill. Another issue that leadership is facing in this moment is that storms across the East Coast had delayed or canceled many of lawmakers' flights who are trying to return back to Washington. In fact, there are Democrats like Congressman Krishnamurthy out in Illinois, and then Republicans like South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who are physically driving to Washington to make sure that they can be here for this vote. The House right now is set to open at 9 a.m. At some point, there would be a vote on the rule related to the bill before they move to debate and then vote on final passage. Of course, it's not a guarantee that they will get the votes on that rule, so there will be a lot of high-stakes drama to watch over the course of the day as the House GOP leadership is trying to muscle this bill through the House to get it on President Trump's desk by Friday.
Arlette, thank you so much for kicking us off. It's going to get very busy there very, very soon. Put on your bingo card, guys. Weather delays adding to the fun.
I was going to say road trip, congressional road trip.
We do love a road trip.
Yeah, what could be more fun than a drive from Chicago to vote on this bill? All right, this morning, a senior White House official says that President Trump has already been working the phones trying to get House lawmakers to pass what he calls everyone's bill. The president is urging Republicans to unite and ignore the occasional grandstanders. Let's get to CNN's Kevin Liptak at the White House this morning. Where does the White House see things right now?
Yeah, there continues to be a lot of confidence in this building that this bill will eventually pass. Trump himself just said yesterday that he thought getting it through the House would actually be easier than the Senate. Despite all of this opposition that you see bubbling up, I think the gamble that they're making is that President Trump's arm twisting, that his pressure tactics will eventually cause these Republicans to get in line. And it's not as if they don't have history on their side here. There are not a lot of examples in recent memory of House Republicans not giving Trump what he wants, and they see what happened in the Senate as kind of a roadmap. You know, there were a number of Republicans who insisted that they were against this bill only to eventually vote yes when it came up on the floor. And so a lot of confidence in this building. One point that they're making is that they have been in continuous touch with the House Republicans throughout this process. They're not just starting to whip this bill now. They have been kind of on the hunt for votes over the last several weeks, even as the Senate was making changes. White House officials still view that Friday deadline as operable, even though President Trump sounded a little more flexible on it yesterday. We did hear from Russ Vought, who's the president's budget director, talking about how they're trying to get some Republicans in line. Listen to what he said.
If you were to take any part of this bill and just debate one part of it, you would have overwhelming support by all Republicans generally. It's all put together. And so we're trying to continue to educate on how much is being done and then the extent to which this is a part of a plan to get to a balanced budget over time.
So you hear that vote, they're talking about educating Republicans. President Trump has also been on the phone. He's been educating, but he's also been threatening, talking about primary challenges to Republicans who might oppose this package. I think the challenge that the president has in front of him is that there are two sort of polar sets of opposition to this bill, whether it's Republicans who think it explodes the deficit or Republicans who thinks that it cuts the social safety net too much. President Trump, you know, I asked him on the South Lawn yesterday about some of the politics of all of this, and he said he didn't want Republicans to go too crazy with cuts. So they're, I think, still very sensitive to some of the politics that could be in play in all of this.
Yeah, he's educating them about how difficult he will make it for them politically if they vote against him. Kevin Liptak at the White House this morning. Keep us posted.
Zach, I want to start with you because I remember covering Congress, and all those last-minute deals are what get you the votes you need. Murkowski voted for this bill. She's someone who people wondered, like, is she gonna, is she not? What do you think happened there?
Well, we know what happened. They gave Alaska a bunch of stuff. You know, exemptions from SNAP cuts. They gave, you know, there more money for Alaskan rural hospitals than for those in other states. And even I was reading, you know, very specific tax deductions for, you know, boat captains in Alaska. It was very simply the way politics used to work on Capitol Hill, and it feels a little gross these days. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when, after they passed Obamacare and there was the Cornhusker kickback, there was a lot of outrage. It probably cost, you know, Ben Nelson his job, the senator from Nebraska at the time. But there doesn't seem to be the same kind of outrage now, just because Murkowski is this sort of, you know, very unique lawmaker
and
on
caring
Capitol
about
Hill.
her state. But I want to turn to you, Kristen, because in a way we're kind of talking about winners and losers. Who were the people who kind of win, so to speak, out of this bill? Who less so? What do you see in that?
So the argument that Republicans are making is that when you talk about who's going to lose health care, who's going to lose benefits, the argument that Republicans on the Hill are making is that the people who are going to lose benefits are folks who are not legally authorized, allowed to be in the country, or folks who are able-bodied, working age, and are not working. And the real test is going to be, is that accurate? For things like work requirements for programs like Medicaid, is the paperwork too onerous, and therefore people who ought to qualify for these benefits just unable to get through the bureaucratic system to get it? Those are the sorts of things that 18 months from now I think are going to play a big role in whether there is true negative political impact from this bill among the very voters that Donald Trump brought to the
You
GOP.
mentioned those Medicaid work requirements, also adding veterans and former foster youth to the work mandate for food stamps. And one that interests me, cap on student loans for kids and their parents who also take out loans. You know, the House Republican from Kentucky, Tom Massey, who's been kind of a thorn in the side of the caucus, opposes the bill still. And the president is threatening to primary him. And here's what that sounds like.
Well, I just don't think he does a good job for the country. He's always a no. I call him Rand Paul Jr. He's always a no. Nothing constructive at all. I mean, just terrible.
Are you seeing people head for the exits? I don't know if there's anyone left to head for the exits under the threat of primary. Are we actually going to see any real opposition here?
I mean, I think in the case of Massey, he is a very strong conservative. This is not a case of like a moderate who doesn't really know what to do with Trump.
We're talking fiscal conservative.
You know, fiscal conservative. You know, he in the last iteration of his back and forth with Trump, he was saying, you know, I've always been America first. I've been MAGA before MAGA. So in his case, it's going to be interesting to see. He represents a very conservative district, and Republicans still haven't figured out exactly who they would have primary him. We've seen that Elon Musk has said he's going to throw a lot of money into that race. So that'll be an interesting one to watch.